Hi there, and welcome to Out There, a Cryptid podcast. I'm Josh, and today we're stepping out of the woods and into the spotlight. Broadway theaters have seen centuries of passion, heartbreak, and drama. And some say that energy never really leaves. From ghost lights to legendary specters, we're diving into the haunted history of New York's most iconic theaters. Let's dive in. Before we get into today's ghostly tales, I want to give a huge thank you to our Patreon supporters. Shout out to Catherine, Caroline, Rebecca, Abars, Imogen, and David, and Abby. You all help keep the lights on, and maybe even the ghost lights too. If you love the show and want to support what we do, head over to our Patreon. You'll get things like early access to ad-free episodes and exclusive bonus content. It's a great way to support the podcast. I am so excited for this episode because it combines both of my loves, Broadway and ghosts. As many of you know, when I'm not a cryptozoologist, I'm a performer, so I thought that I would bring you all into my other world. So, get prepared to be scared. We'll get into the ghosts of Broadway right after this. Broadway theaters are more than just performance spaces. They're living time capsules, many of them built in the late 1800s to early 1900s, with gilded ceilings, velvet curtains, and walls that have soaked in over a century of applause, heartbreak, and lots of drama. Some theaters, like the Lyceum, date back to 1903 and still operate today, while others have been demolished, rebuilt, or renamed over the years. These buildings have hosted thousands of productions, but just as many backstage whisperers claim, the true cast includes more than just the living. With their long histories and countless performers passing through, it's no wonder these theaters are said to be home to lingering spirits. One of the most enduring symbols of this spectral presence is the ghost light, a single bulb left burning on stage when the theater is empty. On a practical level, it's a safety precaution, meant to keep people from falling into the orchestra pits or tripping over set pieces in the dark. But ask anyone in theater long enough, and they'll tell you it's more than just that. Tradition says that the ghost light keeps the spirits at bay, or in some versions, gives them a light to perform by. Either way, it's a ritual every theater honors, because in the world of the stage, a little superstition might just keep you safe. Superstition is in fact woven into the fabric of theatrical life. You never wish someone good luck. You say, break a leg. You never whistle backstage, and you never say the name of Shakespeare's Scottish play inside a theater, unless you're performing it, unless you want to invite a curse in. These rituals may sound quirky or old-fashioned, but they serve a purpose. In a professional built on chaos, nerves, and magic, superstition gives performers a sense of control. And when you're in a century-old theater at midnight with only a ghost light flickering and the sound of creaking wood in the rafters, it's easy to believe there's something or someone still watching from the wings. Now, there are a lot of Broadway theaters, and it is very possible that all of them are haunted. However, there are a handful that battle for the title of Most Haunted Theater on Broadway. Let's start with the Belasco Theater. The Belasco Theater is located on West 44th Street in the heart of Manhattan's Theater District. Originally opened in 1907 as the Stuyvesant Theater, it was renamed after its founder, David Belasco, just a year later. Over its long history, the Belasco has been home to a range of legendary productions, from early Eugene O'Neill dramas to contemporary hits like Hedwig and the Angry Inch, Network starring Bryan Cranston, and most recently, Maybe Happy Endings. Known for its intimate layout and beautifully detailed architecture, it remains one of Broadway's most iconic and, as we know, most haunted venues. Belasco, who built and even lived above the theater until his death in 1931, is said to have never truly left. Known in life for his priest-like attire, earning him nicknames like the Bishop of Broadway, his spirit reportedly continues to make appearances in the theater. Actors and staff have recounted sightings of a man in clerical garb watching performers from the balcony or sitting in an empty box seat during opening nights. Some have even claimed that he approaches them, offering praise or, in some cases, a cheeky pinch. His presence isn't limited to visual sightings, though. Staff have reported hearing unexplained footsteps, doors opening and closing on their own, and the sound of his private elevator operating, despite it being non-functional for years. Some have even smelled cigar smoke backstage, a scent associated with Belasco during his lifetime. The theater has been the site of various unexplained phenomena. Reports include the sounds of raucous 1920s-style parties emanating from Belasco's sealed apartment, only for staff to find it empty and undisturbed upon investigation. During a production of Journey's End, actors claimed to see a female ghost in the balcony during scenes depicting death. Another one of the Belasco Theater's most famous spirits is the Lady in Blue, said to be the ghost of a woman who died after falling down the theater's elevator shaft. According to legend, if a production costumes an actress in a robin's egg blue dress, like a tribute, she'll leave the show alone. Even though the elevator she supposedly died in has been deactivated for years, people still report hearing it rattle and move. There's also this beautiful, somewhat hidden second-floor bar that used to be Mr. Belasco's private reception room, along with a bank of offices where his original staff worked. Some of those original details are still there, including his actual desk, which is now used by the current house manager. Multiple staff members have said that doors in the building will lock on their own, with no one near them at all, and the feeling of someone else being there is pretty common. Even animals have reacted to the theater's haunted reputation. A caretaker's dog reportedly growled at an unseen presence every day at precisely 4 p.m., suggesting a routine visit from the theater's namesake. There are so many people who have worked at this theater that have had supernatural encounters. Melissa Errico, who starred as Mina in the Dracula musical, has shared some chilling experiences from her time at the theater. According to her, her dresser Kathy once saw the ghost of Mr. Belasco himself walk straight into a mirror just outside her dressing room. She's convinced he lives in that mirror. Melissa also recalled a night when she forgot her coat. The room was dark, and she turned back to grab it. A small table lamp suddenly turned on by itself, lighting her way. Even eerier, as she opened the door to leave, it quietly closed behind her, without her ever touching it. She swears she watched it move on its own. Joe Traina, a former house manager, said, "If any theater on Broadway is haunted, then it is surely the Belasco. A couple of things have happened to me and others whom I have known that I can't explain in any ordinary way. When I worked at the Belasco, one of the follow spot operators said he saw a man in a dark suit out of the corner of his eye in a section of the balcony, but that when he looked directly at him, the man was gone. The whole balcony section was empty of patrons at the time. Even famous Broadway star Kelly O'Hara has seen ghosts there. She said during both Follies and Dracula, there were incidents with ghosts. In Tech for Follies, my castmate, Roxanne Barlow, started screaming. She described a man in a robe who was sitting in the balcony facing sideways, not watching us, but staring off. What she described sounded exactly like Mr. Belasco. But we all rushed up to the theater balcony, and there was no one there. Then, during Dracula, one day, Melissa came out of the bathroom in the second-floor hallway. There was a mirror at the end of the hall, and she saw a woman ahead of her walking, and rather than turning down the hall, the woman walked straight into the mirror. And film and television star Laura Linney said, "When I found out I was doing honor at the Belasco, people started telling me it was haunted. I didn't think about it much until we were doing our final dress rehearsal. The Belasco has a mezzanine and a balcony. The balcony could only be accessed from the outside in 1998, and those doors were locked. I had a monologue during the play that I would deliver to Jane Alexander. During the monologue, my character looked up to the balcony and then back at Jane. That night, I looked to the balcony, and standing at the railing, there was a woman in a robin's egg blue satin dress with crimped blonde hair. She was standing very still and looking at the theater. I looked right at her and thought, well, hello. She didn't scare me, and I didn't stop what I was doing. I wanted her to feel welcome. But when I looked at the balcony again, she was gone. At the time, I didn't tell anyone. It felt wonderful, frankly. It was also frightening. It was a weirdly terrific feeling to know that there was a spirit in the house with us. Later in the run, I went to our house manager to chat. I had heard that the Con Edison guys wouldn't go in the Belasco Theater basement because it was haunted. There were all sorts of rumors circulating around the theater. I told the house manager that I thought I'd seen a ghost during our final dress rehearsal. He asked, male or female? I told him, female, and he went, blue dress, blonde hair? Apparently there are 2 ghosts at the Belasco, and they like to show up at final dress rehearsals. She's one of them. But the Belasco isn't the only Broadway house with a lingering presence from the past. Just a few blocks away sits one of the most stunning and storied theaters in the city, a place where the lights sparkle like magic, and the ghost stories are just as dazzling. The New Amsterdam Theater, located on West 42nd Street, is one of Broadway's oldest and most iconic venues. It opened its doors in 1903 and quickly became the crown jewel of the theater district. It was home to the legendary Ziegfeld Follies, featuring stars like Fanny Brice and W.C. Fields, and the kind of lavish spectacles that made Broadway what it is today. But, like many theaters, it hit hard times during the Great Depression. By the mid-1930s, live performances had stopped altogether, and for decades the building sat neglected. That is, until the 1990s, when Disney swept in as part of the Times Square revitalization. They gave the New Amsterdam a massive facelift and reopened it in 1997 with The Lion King, which, as we all know, went on to become one of the biggest blockbusters in Broadway history, still running to this day. But even with all that Disney sparkle, some things from the past refused to leave. The New Amsterdam is famously haunted by Olive Thomas, a former Ziegfeld Follies girl and silent film actress. Now, Olive Thomas was more than just a name whispered in the wings. She was a real person whose life was as dazzling as it was tragic. Born Olivia R. Duffy in 1894, she began her ascent to stardom as an illustrator's model in New York City. Her striking beauty caught the attention of Ziegfeld, leading to her debut in The Follies in 1915. From there, she quickly became a favorite, not just for her looks, but for her vivacious spirit, and was soon featured in more risque midnight frolics. captivating audiences from the rooftop stages of the New Amsterdam Theater. Olive starred in over 20 silent films between 1916 and 1920, including notable titles like The Flapper, which helped define the flapper archetype in American culture. Her personal life was equally high profile. In 1916, she married actor Jake Pickford. Their relationship was a whirlwind of passion and turbulence, often making headlines. In September 1920, while vacationing in Paris with Jack, Olive ingested mercury, a toxic substance prescribed to Jack for his syphilis treatment. Olive supposedly had mistaken it for something else, possibly a sleeping aid. Her untimely death shocked the world and is considered one of Hollywood's first major scandals. The circumstances surrounding her passing fueled rampant speculation, ranging from suicide to foul play, though it was officially ruled an accident. Olive's ghost has been spotted countless times over the years, usually wearing a green beaded Follies dress and holding a blue glass bottle, the same kind that reportedly caused her death. When Disney was restoring the theater, sightings of Olive ramped up again. One night, a security guard claimed to see a woman matching her description cross the stage and vanish into a wall. He quit on the spot. Despite the spooky factor, Olive doesn't seem to have a mean bone in her ghostly body. Her vibe is more mischievous than malicious. Theater staff have reported flickering lights, cold spots, footsteps in empty hallways, and objects moving on their own. She's also known to appear mostly to men, sometimes even in a flirtatious air, as if the follies never ended. It's become tradition for anyone locking up the theater at night to say "Good night, Olive," just to keep her at ease. Because, whether you believe in ghosts or not, nobody wants to upset a Broadway diva, even one from beyond the grave. During the early previews of Aladdin, a female conductor, someone who had previously worked on Mary Poppins and already knew the story of Olive, had a quiet, almost ceremonial moment before one of her performances. She was getting ready in one of the dressing rooms, and feeling a bit nervous, she decided to speak to Olive directly. According to an email she later wrote, she said out loud, "Well, Olive, I'm back again, and I'm a little nervous. I just wanted to introduce myself again and ask if you could please give me some good luck." Then, half joking, half curious, she wondered aloud, "I wonder what the Follies girls would have thought of a female conductor." And that's when something strange happened. 4 of the round dressing room bulbs, brand new, just installed for the show, flickered on and off in unison, just for a second, then stopped. She said, "It was like a wink. She was signaling that she was fine with the idea." Dana Amendola, who was a longtime Disney executive at the New Amsterdam, shared the story and made it clear. If there really are such things as ghosts, and if Olive is still there, she said, "we embrace it. She's never violent, always playful. She kind of embodies what we're all about here at Disney. We're in the business of happiness, and to have someone from so long ago acknowledge that she's pleased makes us feel like we're doing the right things." But Amendola also made it clear Olive doesn't just show up on command. She doesn't appear on Halloween, for instance. When people try to find her, they can't. She tends to appear just at the moment we forget about her, when we're busy putting in a new show or putting a new office in, when there are changes happening. And then he added the part that really gives me chills. "You don't find Olive," he said. "She finds you." Even now, Olive's presence is something the current cast and crew take seriously, especially over at Aladdin, which is playing at the New Amsterdam. A friend of mine is in the cast, and she told me that when things start going haywire, lights misfiring, sound cues glitching, set pieces going off track, the first thing they do is to try to smooth things over with Olive. They'll pause and say something like, "You're the tallest, most beautiful showgirl with the longest legs," just to keep her happy. There was even a night recently, just this past week, where 3 separate technical things went wildly wrong with no explanation. Everyone backstage just kind of looked at each other like, yeah, that's Olive. They figured she wasn't thrilled about the extra rehearsals and decided to remind everyone who really runs the place. More on the ghosts of Broadway right after this. Now let's move on to our next theater. The St. James Theater, located on West 44th Street, has been a Broadway staple since 1927. Originally known as the Arlangers Theater, it housed some of the most iconic productions in Broadway history: Oklahoma, Hello Dolly, The Producers, and more recently, Frozen and the revival of Sunset Boulevard. The theater itself is grand, with over 1,700 seats, a rich Georgian design, and the classic old Broadway charm. But, like many of its century-old peers, the St. James seems to hold on to more than just theatrical history. People who have worked in the theater, especially during tech weeks, have noticed things that feel a little off. There's a long-standing pattern of unexplained electrical issues, lights flickering or cutting out without reason, sound equipment shorting during runs, and other mishaps that don't line up with typical tech bugs. It's not uncommon for performers and crew to laugh it off with a "must be a ghost" joke, but when it keeps happening, you start to wonder. And then there's the smell. More than one person has reported catching sudden overpowering scents, floral perfume, something musty, or even a whiff of smoke, with no source to be found. The air will totally be normal one moment and then change in an instant, usually during late-night rehearsals or right before curtain. No specific ghost has been consistently tied to the space, but the consensus among those who have worked there is simple. There's something, definitely, hanging around. Whether it's the energy of past performers or a restless spirit trying to make their presence known, the St. James keeps you on your toes, even when the lights are out. Even the legendary Patti LuPone said, "There was a woman in the Gypsy cast whose family is sensitive to that, which is otherworldly and supernatural. Her brother was on Ghost Hunters. She couldn't sit in the St. James mezzanine. It totally freaked her out. She felt more than one ghostly presence." The spirit is affectionately known as Henrietta. The name was given by Russ, a longtime doorman at the theater, who reportedly experienced a near accident on the stairs, averted, he believes, by an unseen force. He named the presence Henrietta after a ghost character in a movie he had recently watched. Henrietta's presence is associated with various unexplained occurrences within the theater. Chorus members have reported being mysteriously locked in their dressing rooms, and stagehands have witnessed an unusual mist rising from the stage floor. These incidents contribute to the belief that Henrietta is an active, albeit mischievous, spirit residing at the St. James. The theater's haunted reputation is further supported by reports of a laughing ghost, as noted in accounts of Broadway's haunted venues. While it's unclear if this entity is Henrietta or another spirit, such stories add to the theater's mystique. Now, if the spirits at the St. James prefer to mess with tech and lighting, the ghosts just down the street at the Palace Theater take things to the next level. This isn't just any theater. It's one of the most iconic, soaked in vaudeville history and layered with decades of superstition. And when it comes to hauntings, the Palace might be the most paranormally packed house on Broadway. The Palace Theater originally opened in 1913 on Broadway and 47th Street, is one of the most iconic and storied venues in the New York theater history. Back in the vaudeville days, playing the Palace wasn't just a gig, it was the pinnacle of success. If you got booked there, you'd officially made it. Everyone from Ethel Barrymore to Judy Garland stood under those lights. The theater was a jewel of the vaudeville circuit and later transitioned into hosting musicals, concerts, and even cinema screenings as the entertainment landscape changed. Its architecture is classic, with grand staircases and the golden age elegance that feels frozen in time. Over the decades, the Palace saw boom, decline, and rebirth. When vaudeville fell out of fashion, it became a movie house for a while, then returned to live performance in the mid-20th century. Judy Garland's legendary concert run there in the 1950s helped reignite interest in the space and brought the Palace back into the public view. Since then, it's hosted major Broadway hits like Beauty and the Beast, Annie, and Aida, among many others. The theater underwent several renovations over the years, and as of 2023, it was in the middle of a massive lift. Literally. They raised the entire building 30 feet into the air to make space for new retail beneath it. Even in transition, the Palace remains a central figure in Broadway's landscape. And with that much history in the walls, over a century of performers, mishaps, triumphs, and heartbreaks, it's no wonder the Palace has become one of the most famously haunted theaters in New York. It's the kind of building that feels charged the moment you step inside. You can almost hear the echoes of applause and whispers of the past trapped beneath the velvet seats and heavy stage curtains. It's one of the only Broadway theaters with a functioning backstage elevator, still used to move actors and crew between dressing rooms and the stage. The operator has a set routine every night, almost like a silent cast member following their own cue sheet. Scene 3, pick up 4 people on the second floor, bring them to stage level, blah blah blah. But long after the curtain has come down, custodians and late-night staff have reported hearing that same elevator running, with no one in it, moving from floor to floor, as if someone unseen is still making their nightly rounds. One theory is that the elevator ghost might be the spirit of Murray Rowe. Rowe was the Palace's head usher in the 1920s and was beloved for his kindness and quiet leadership, but he had a complicated past. Turns out, he was the son of famed writer E.P. Rowe, and at one point he had a massive fortune and ties to New York high society. After a divorce and a mysterious stint in South America, he returned to the US broke and took a job at the Palace. When he was found dead between 2 boulders in Central Park in 1927, many in the theater community mourned him deeply. With his connection to both the Palace and the elevator, some say he never really left, and that his spirit may be the one still riding the lift each night. And then there are the performers. The Palace ghost is sometimes said to be Louis Barcelino, an acrobat who took a terrible 18-foot fall during a performance in 1935. Though he survived, the fall was traumatic enough that apparently his spirit replays the incident over and over. His ghost is said to reenact the incident, swinging from the rafters before emanating a blood-curdling scream and disappearing. But there are many different spirits said to call this theater home. Among the most frequently mentioned is the apparition of a white-gowned cellist seen playing silently in the orchestra pit. Actress Andrea McArnold, during her time as Belle in Beauty and the Beast, reported seeing this spectral musician during a performance. Another commonly reported spirit is that of a child who plays peekaboo in the mezzanine. The laughter of this unseen child is said to be heard echoing through the theater, unsettling late-night staff. And apparently, the spirit of Miss Judy Garland herself is said to be felt around the door that was specifically built for her near the rear of the orchestra. Now, from the vibrant history of the Palace, we head to the Lyceum, where the spirits aren't just memories, they're part of the building's legacy. As Broadway's oldest continually operating theater, the Lyceum has stood the test of time, witnessing countless performances, but in its halls, the echoes of past productions seem to linger a little longer than expected. The Lyceum Theater is located on West 45th Street and holds the title of New York City's oldest continually operating Broadway house. Since opening its doors in 1903, it's been a cornerstone of theatrical history. With a stage that's seen the likes of Ethel Barrymore and Walter Houston, and productions that span from Shakespeare to contemporary dramas, architecturally stunning with its Beaux Arts design, the Lyceum doesn't just carry theatrical history, it carries spiritual baggage too. Over the years, the theater has developed a reputation for being haunted. Unexplained smells like phantom cigar smoke often drift through the air. Sounds come from the balcony when no one is there, and performers have claimed they felt someone watching them from the wings. During the 2015 Broadway revival of The Visit at the Lyceum Theater, things started to get weird. Cast and crew members began experiencing a string of bizarre and unexplained phenomena, lights flickering, props moving, and an overwhelming smell of cigarette smoke, with no visible source. And this wasn't just your usual backstage superstition. It got to the point where people started joking, maybe not so jokingly, that they were being haunted by none other than Bob Fosse himself. Fosse, known for his groundbreaking choreography and chain-smoking habit, had strong ties to members of the production and Broadway history in general. The eerie smell of smoke hanging in the air felt like a calling card. But the speculation wasn't limited to backstage whispers. Emily Petrain, the house manager at the time, publicly confirmed the suspicion. She told the press and visitors point blank, "We do believe we have a ghost." And given the Lyceum's age, history, and its long list of dramatic personalities who have walked those boards, it's not hard to imagine that someone, maybe even Fosse, is still hanging around to give his own notes from the beyond. Others have named different spirits. One staffer from Lincoln Center Theater once wrote about feeling a presence while alone on stage, convinced it was playwright Garson Kenin. And the strange sensations aren't just limited to one area. The Lyceum is built vertically, with offices and dressing rooms stacked above and below the house, creating a maze of spaces where energy can linger. Whether it's the spirits of old actors, directors, or just residual energy from a century of performances, one thing's clear: the Lyceum is alive with more than just the thrill of live theater. During the final weekend of the Scottsboro Boys in 2010, things backstage got strange. Actor Coleman Domingo recalled that on that Friday, the lights and computer equipment started acting up, flickering, glitching, and just generally misbehaving in ways no one could explain. The whole cast and crew felt it. As Domingo put it, they definitely felt we were in the presence of some ghosts. More on the ghosts of Broadway right after this. Beyond the more well-known haunted venues, several other Broadway theaters have ghost stories that still give performers and crew chills. At the Lyric Theater, audiences reportedly saw playwright Clyde Fitch take a bow on opening night of The City, even though he had died months earlier. At the Al Hirschfield Theater, formerly known as the Martin Beck Theater, has had reports of mischievous ghostly behaviors, especially during the 2003 revival of Wonderful Town, with some believing the spirit of Martin Beck was disturbed by the renaming. Over at the New Victory Theater, the ghosts of early 20th century actress Mrs. Leslie Carter is said to linger, with the staff reporting strange happenings. Meanwhile, Radio City Music Hall is supposedly visited by its original impresario, Samuel Roxy Rothafel, and sometimes even a mysterious woman in evening wear, both said to appear on opening nights. All of these iconic venues add another eerie layer to the rich, ghost-filled tapestries of Broadway. Now, theaters have always been a home for superstition, and when you step back and think about it, it makes sense. You're working with emotional people. Heightened stories, intense energy, and buildings that have often been standing longer than anyone in them. Add in long hours, nerves, exhaustion, and stage fog, and suddenly a whisper from the wings or a flicker of light doesn't seem so easily explained. I have spent a lot of late nights in theaters, both old and new, all around America. There's something about walking through a silent auditorium after a long rehearsal that just hums with energy. You can almost hear applause echoing off the walls from decades ago. Or maybe it's just a building breathing. But I'll tell you, more than once I've paused backstage because I was certain I wasn't alone. I've only had one ghostly encounter in a theater, and it happened in a place you might not expect, on a Disney Cruise Line ship. Now, working those ships is no joke. I had 7 quick changes in one show alone. During tech runs or dress rehearsals, we'd be running around like crazy, setting up costumes in every backstage nook so we could fly in and out of them during the show. This particular day, I was in my dressing room collecting all my costume pieces for that evening. I grabbed everything except one, but that wasn't too weird. Sometimes wardrobe would pull a piece for alterations, so I just assumed that was the case. I went about setting up the rest for my quick changes, then casually asked the wardrobe team if they had that missing costume. They didn't. That's when I started to get a little uneasy. I went back and searched the dressing room. Nothing. Checked everyone else's racks. Nothing. The whole team joined in, looking through every corner. Still, nothing. Finally, I went down to the trap room, which is below the stage where my quick change would be happening. And right there was the missing costume. Folded perfectly, sitting on top of the matching shoes. No one had been down there. No one had moved it. It was like it had been placed there, intentionally waiting for me. There's no explanation, but every time I went down to that trap room after that, I made sure to say thank you, just in case. Now, here's what I'd love. If you've had a backstage ghost story, send it in. Whether you're an actor, a designer, an usher, or a stagehand, if something unexplainable happened in the dark corners of a theater, I want to hear it. Maybe we'll put together a part 2 with your stories. Or maybe we'll just spook ourselves for fun. So, what do you think? Are spirits really out there? Be sure to follow us on Instagram @OutThereCryptids for episode posts, updates, and more. Join our community on Discord, where we dive even deeper into the mysteries we explore here on the podcast. The link can be found on our Instagram. And if you're loving the show, consider supporting us on Patreon. As a patron, you'll get exclusive perks like bonus episodes and early access, and even surprises. See you next week.